Howdy, we are on now to part 3. So with acquisitions come a number of different problems that can happen. There can be issues with integration, inadequate target evaluation, debt, the inability to achieve synergy, too much diversification. Managers may become overly focused on acquisitions and forget to run the company that they're in charge of. And ultimately, firms can get too large. So to take these and go into a little more detail, integration challenges can come related to melding disparate corporate cultures, linking different financial and control systems, building effective working relationships, particularly when management styles differ, resolving problems regarding the status of the newly acquired firm's executives who may or may not still have a job, and then following up with that, maybe those executives or important personnel leave, and this loss of key personnel can weaken the acquired firm's capabilities and ultimately reduce its value. You no longer have the people that made it the company that it was. Inadequate target evaluation comes when firms do not go through proper due diligence. They should be doing a lot of research. They should evaluate a number of things. They should especially look at the financing of the intended transaction, differences in culture between the firms, tax consequences of the transaction, and what actions may be necessary to meld the two workforces together. Next, we will talk about large or extraordinary debt. So sometimes acquisitions are financed by high debt, but this can increase the likelihood of the acquiring firm's bankruptcy. It can lead to a downgrade in its credit rating, making it more difficult for the firm to borrow and to invest in the future, and may preclude investment in activities that contribute to the firm's long-term success. This could include R&D, human resource training, marketing, and I'll throw in an example here from when I was working at Payless Shoe Source, where we were unable to invest sufficiently in maintaining new stores and updating stores because we were in so much debt following an acquisition. Now I want to look here and go back to this example of Novartis and Endocyte. So you'll notice here that Novartis, the stock price actually went up. Investors were able to say and see that the stock price, or that Novartis would be more valuable with Endocyte as part of its portfolio. The interesting thing here is you notice this huge jump in the Endocyte stock price. And I want to talk a little bit about why this happens. So when we think about a stock price, what does it really represent? Well, it's an economic equilibrium between somebody who was willing to buy at a particular price and someone who is willing to sell at that price. That's what a current stock price is. It doesn't necessarily guarantee what the next stock price will be, but it's what the most recent transaction was. So if that's what this represents, then everybody who's holding at $16 supposedly wants to hold on at that price. So if the acquiring firm were to come in and offer $12 a share, nobody would be willing to accept. If they were, they would already sell to somebody at this point, or they already would have sold. So the price of 24, this is to incentivize the shareholders of Endocyte to accept this acquisition. If you don't offer high enough, the shareholders will say, no, we want to hold. We feel like the company is worth more than this, or it will be worth more than this. We want to hold for something more that we think the company will be able to achieve on its own, or perhaps through another deal later. So this acquisition, or this increase in price, is called the acquisition premium. How much extra do you have to pay to make the acquisition actually go through? And that's the reason that acquisitions can end up becoming so difficult and so expensive. So acquisitions can be very costly and as a result, very risky. Another challenge here is that there may be an inability to achieve synergy, which is when assets are worth more used in conjunction with each other than when they are used separately. Firms experience transaction costs when they use acquisition strategies to create synergy, and sometimes the cost of these transactions of putting everything together is more than the firm, or more than was expected. Firms tend to underestimate the indirect costs when evaluating a potential acquisition. But then One thing to note here is that a private synergy can be created when combining two firms' assets in order to yield capabilities and core competencies that could not be developed by combining and integrating either firm's assets with any other company. Ultimately, these two companies together create something valuable that no other two companies could have done. That's the goal, but sometimes it doesn't happen very well. Here's an example of a company seeking synergy. So MasterCard was announced an agreement to acquire a company called Transfast, a global cross-border account-to-account money transfer network. They felt like the company could be stronger and that MasterCard and Transfast together would be able to offer applications solving various challenges related to cross-border money transfer. And they said specifically there are substantial synergies with MasterCard for even further growth across our products. These companies could create something together that neither could separately. Next, we come to diversification. So diversified firms must process more information of greater diversity, and it's more complicated for the managers to take care of this company. Increased operational scope created by diversification may cause managers to rely too much on financial rather than strategic controls to evaluate business units' performances. When they don't understand the intricacies of each business and each part of the company, they may simplify and say, we just want a particular level of performance without understanding the underlying strategies necessary to do so. The strategic focus then shifts to short-term performance, and acquisitions sometimes may become substitutes for innovation altogether. Another challenge is that managers can become overly focused on acquisitions. They spend a lot of their time searching for viable acquisition candidates. They spend a lot of time doing this due diligence, which is necessary if you're going to do it. They have to prepare for negotiations. They have to manage integration of the companies after the acquisition is completed. All this time and energy makes the manager's job more difficult. Another problem related to, or that's related here, is for the managers of the target firms. They may begin to operate in a state of virtual suspension. They don't know what to do, or suspended animation during the acquisition. What would the acquiring firm want them to do? They may not know. They may become hesitant to make decisions with long-term consequences until negotiations have been completed, and they may develop a short-term operating perspective and a greater aversion to risk. And then here we see that acquisitions can lead to companies becoming ultimately too large. There are costs involved with this. The cost of controls may exceed the benefits of economies of scale and market power. Large size may lead to the company to become too bureaucratic. Formalized controls may lead to rigid behavior and standardized managerial behavior where maybe more flexibility should have been in place. And as a result of all of this, the firm may become less innovative. So question number 3, what problems did or could happen with the merger and acquisition examples that you previously identified?